Now, I'm sure you're anxious to get going on color correction, color correcting your photos, and making them look their best. But there's one more thing that I want to explain here, in addition to understanding the color modes and your channels palette and RGB and CMYK, and that is understanding black point and white point inside Photoshop. And I didn't know about this stuff when I first started getting into color correction. Like most people, I just jumped in with both feet and I just wanted to make my images look their best. And I didn't really understand exactly what black point and white point were all about and how they functioned. So hopefully I'll be kind of setting you down the right path here by explaining all of this up front. And it'll only take a few minutes, and I think it'll make a world of difference. And the example that I'm going to create here with you, we're going to create a little experiment here inside Photoshop, is really simple, and I think it'll really help to hammer home this idea of black point and white point. So what I'm going to do with you here is I'm going to create a brand new blank Photoshop file. Go ahead and hit Command N or Control N there on the Windows side. And I've already set up my dialog box here. What I want to do is I want to create a 300 pixel in width by 100 pixel in height image. Your resolution doesn't matter so much, but make sure that your color mode is set to grayscale as well. And then we should be good to roll here. Go ahead and click on OK. All right, I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit on my image. And the next thing that I want to do is I'm going to double click on my background layer, and I'm going to convert him to a regular old Photoshop layer, of course. And then what I want to do is I want to get rid of all of the white pixels inside my image. So I'm just going to hit Command A or Control A to select all, and then hit delete on my keyboard. That's all there is to it. Go ahead and deselect there. So now we have a document that is completely filled with the checkerboard pattern, complete transparency, of course. Now, next up, what I want to do is I want to create 3 rectangles inside the image, and we're going to fill these rectangles with different percentages of gray, and then we'll get Photoshop to show us the black point and the white point. So here's what I'm going to do. I will hit the M key on my keyboard to switch over to the rectangular marquee tool. Make sure it's the rectangular marquee tool that you are on inside the toolbox there. And what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to click and drag out a box, maybe about this big, taking up about 1/3 of the document, maybe just a little bit wider, something like that. And what I want to do is I want to fill this with 75% black, or 75% gray, really, is what we should say. So over inside your swatches panel, make sure you have your swatches panel open. Just hover your mouse over top of these gray swatches and you should get a little tooltip showing up. I got lucky. I hovered right over top of 75% gray. That's the guy that I'm after. So you might have to hunt around a little bit for this guy. But go ahead and click on that guy. And what that does, by the way, is that loads the swatch that you just clicked on into your foreground color swatch down at the bottom of the toolbox. Perfect. Do you remember how to fill with your foreground color? I hope so. Hold down Option or hold down Alt there on the Windows side. Hit Delete on your keyboard. Perfect. That's all we need. Okay, next up, I'm going to move my selection over towards the right just a little bit, something like this. And, I'm still on my rectangular selection tool, so I'm just moving marching ants at this point, so hopefully just fine. In fact, if you overlap your previous square just a little bit, that's just fine. Even something like this is fine. All right, now the next selection that we have here, the next block that we're going to create, is going to be filled with 35% black. So same story. I'm going to head back to my swatches panel and look for 35% black. See where we are here. There's 50. There's 35 on the top row. Single click on that guy. And then same story. Alt or Option and hit Delete on your keyboard. Perfect. Okay, one more to go here. I'm going to move my selection over. Something like this. Perfect. And this guy's going to get filled with just 10% black. So look for your 10% there inside your swatches palette. There he is, the second gray color swatch there. Hold down Alt or hold down Option and hit Delete. Okay, perfect. Go ahead and deselect. Now, just as a point of interest, I'm going to flip over to my info palette. Make sure your info palette is open. Again, you might have to head back to your window menu. And what the info palette does, by the way, is he gives us color information and different details about where our cursor is currently placed and what's sort of happening inside our document. So if I hover my mouse over top of the lightest block inside my experiment here, in the top left corner of my info palette, I have K, and I can see there that I have 10%. Now, I hope you have the same thing here. Now, if you don't, let's head to the Info Palette's option menu and then choose panel options, and make sure that your second color readout, let's do this together, is set to grayscale. So second color readout mode, make sure it's set to grayscale. Go ahead and click on OK. And now when you bring your mouse over top of that first color block, either in the left or in the right corner, but definitely in the top right corner, you should now see K 10%. Bring my cursor over top of the center block and it says K 35%. I'm looking in my info palette. And then finally K 75% for the right hand block. So what the heck is all this about anyway? Well, here's what I want to do. What I want Photoshop to do is I want Photoshop to take my darkest pixels inside my image and make them pure black, and take my lighter pixels and make them pure white, and then take the midtones, the center pixel, if you will, and shift it just a little bit as well. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this is in a lot of the different color correction tools that you'll see in the coming lessons, a lot of them deal with this thing called white point and black point, or dark point and light point, and of course midtones as well. And again, this is all the stuff that I missed up front, so that's why I'm kind of giving it to you here. Now I'm going to give you a really simple example here. I'm going to get Photoshop, again, to take my darkest areas of my image and make them pure black, and the lightest areas and make them pure white. And then I'll show you a real world example on an actual photo, and you'll see how this works out. So I'm going to head up to my image menu, and inside the image menu we have a set of auto commands. Now, auto color is grayed out for me right now, but I have auto contrast and auto tone. Go ahead and choose auto tone. All right, now what happens is my darkest gray now became pure black. How do I know it's pure black? I hover my mouse over top of it. I move my eye up into my info palette, top right corner. It now says K 100%. So that is pure black. So it shifted the color. It shifted the dark point from 75 all the way to 100. So this is what we would call a shift in the black point, or a shift in the dark point, or a shift in the shadows. You could call it that as well. Over to the right-hand side of my image, and it's now shifted that from 10% all the way to 0. So it pushed all of the light-colored pixels from 10% all the way to 0. So it shifted the color in the opposite direction. And then as far as the midtones goes, it just shifted them a little bit. It went from 35 to 38. So really what's happened here is a shift in the black and the white, and also a little bit with the midtones. Now again, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense until we actually see black point and white point being shifted in real photographs. So let's do that next.